This is Kaos Nova, and here is another one of my Kaos Tutorials episodes. Originally, I planned on presenting you with just a guide for Command Conquer Renegade, but instead I will show you more than just the original game with the availability of the app known as EA Play on Steam, and working for the most part with most of its applications available on a subscription basis with the app. You will find EA Play as an app in Steam by a quick search. Now the app has two subscription options. One subscription plan is $0.99 for the first month, followed by $5.99 for each following month you remain subscribed to the EA Play service. The second option is paying $39.99 for a full year subscription.
Now, as you go through the terms of the subscription here, we're going to be looking at a couple of games here. So we have the Jedi games from more recently, Mirror's Edge, we have Spore, Command Conquer Remastered Collection. So these are what I already have. We have the label in library. So yeah, so some of these do not work. Tiberian Dawn doesn't. Red Alert originally doesn't, but here's Renegade right here, which I promised I would do for the next episode. So there's the Renegade page, and so it works, but I'm going to go into this in a minute. Now, before we get really started, I have an earlier video showing you how to install Steam, and I recommend you take a look at it. Link is going to be in the description, and I recommend checking it out. It's a good setup for getting games working on Steam. Now, let's get started. Let's start with going over what games from EA Play I have tested which works so far. I have a blog article over on Radio Chaos blog. Check it out, radiochaos2.blogspot.com for more details, but I will go through the main games here that work. So we're going to start with Command Conquer Renegade. So this game was a first-person shooter set in the Command Conquer universe. It was a nice way of playing in the roles of an individual soldier or commando. You can play as the commander known as Nick Parker Havoc in the main campaign single player. You can also play in multiplayer as various characters from the game. In multiplayer, your idea is to destroy the enemy's base by getting inside their buildings as the infantry that you play as. You can also command vehicles. In this case, we're going to be doing a little bit of the campaign and a little bit of the multiplayer practice, which is where you play a single player and we can only use one map of the game. Now, this has gotten an inspiration to get a rather remake of the game, total conversion of the game called Renegade X. It's not affiliated with Command Conquer, so you'd have to go looking for it yourself, unfortunately. But otherwise, in Renegade, the game works very well using EA Play on Steam, and it is working very well right now. I'm playing on the highest graphic settings, which is good news. Very good news. So as I play through this and I go into multiplayer practice, another thing to remember is to turn off all the special or advanced settings for Codeweavers. You might have advanced settings turned on for other games like Age of Empires games on Steam or Halo Master Chief Collection. Those are the ones I have tested. I have articles for them on my blog, and link will be in the description. But make sure you have advanced settings turned off when you're playing these older games, as advanced settings are something that is made for newer games such as Mad Max or Halo Master Chief Collections, games from the 2010s and beyond. Now, unfortunately, the original Tiberian Dawn and Red Alert do not work well. I have the guide to Command Conquer Remastered in another episode. I will link in the description for it. As you go through with Renegade, this is the second mission of the game, where you're going through the town to find the Nod base. I like the later missions a little bit better, where you can actually go inside Nod buildings and secret installations. But the campaign I enjoy very much too. Just it's a way to play with the characters and items from Command Conquer as a first-person shooter, the experience of things inside the game. Now, we're going to go into a little bit of new territory for the other games that work on EA Play. That includes Command & Conquer Generals and 0 Hour expansion. So we're going to get started really soon with those. Alright, so here we are with Command & Conquer Generals. We are getting started. It's a standalone. It's not part of the Tiberium or Red Alert series, but it was a testing ground for many of the mechanics and an expansion on some mechanics, such as infantry garrisoning from Red Alert 2. Now you can do just about any infantry type in a building for garrisons. So that was carried over, as well as the 3D aspect where you can rotate your camera or orbit your camera on the battlefield and look for views. Using the camera angles on a 3D battlefield was used for a different set of games, an earlier set of games like Bungie, in terms of firsts, called The Myth, The Fallen Lords. Now, with Myth, The Fallen Lords, the first one was only for macOS, but this is Bungie before Halo began, but it's great that RTS games eventually had the 3D camera view where you could orbit the camera, rotate it, zoom in, zoom out, and so on. It's great. But as this is getting started, yes, now we're going to not be bothered too much by the intro. Let the epic intro play.
In the modern world, great leaders resolve their conflicts with words. Shed launcher. Carbon bombing. Tomahawk missiles. Alright, so now that it's started, yeah, you see that there because you don't have the fonts available for the game, so you have that annoying big letters occasionally because of the lack of fonts. Otherwise, it runs pretty well. I'm going to go to options. I don't like 800 by 600. I like 1024 by 768. Yeah, that. I mean, obviously this game was way back before we had HD graphics as we know them, so I'm just going to play you can play as a campaign. I'm just going to do a skirmish for now. Because I realized I didn't have the game saved a long time ago, so I should have to go to skirmish. China. And so I'm not going to play the whole skirmish. I'm just going to go through this while I talk about generals. So, again, Generals is a 3D RTS by EA Games, and it was a setup or a precursor for a lot of the technology, a lot of what you see in later Tiberian Wars, Tiberian Twilight, or even Red Alert 3, and the expansions for those games with the changing the camera angle, zooming in or zooming out, 3D RTS. It's completely separate from either of those main series from Command & Conquer, although many of the concepts carry over. So this is supposed to be some kind of war involving China, a terrorist group that's like the Taliban on steroids called the GLA, and the USA. So it was just a projected idea and a totally separate timeline of what some kind of future war on terror could be. And it's kind of fun, the weird things you can do, and some of it's ridiculous. Like I can pick up scrap from other vehicles and assimilate the aspects of vehicles of the GLA into my own. With China, I can steal money from the enemy by computer hacking them. And with the USA, I get supply drops and cold fusion, and a laser, well, particle beam technically. but I have a bias for playing China because, again, this isn't the real life Chinese. It's the video game idea of what China is. I just like computer hacking and stealing people's money, stealing my enemy's money in a war with computers. So, or shutting off their things because China has the EMP ability. Don't ask me why. But this is before the 0 Hour expansion, which I'll be talking about more later. And so I'm going to be going into more elements of what you can do on Codeweavers crossover Steam with special preferences, and I'm going to be featuring Halo, the Master Chief Collection, in the next one. So how to get that running. As I mentioned earlier, you have advanced settings, and you should have them turned off because these are older games, even though they are new on the EA Play subscription service. Other games on EA Play may require advanced settings. The main idea is that compatibility with old games and compatibility with newer, more recent games from the 2010s and beyond is a different matter. There are some exceptions of newer games like Command Conquer Remastered, which is there as an option for remastered rather than playing on EA Play the original Command Conquer and Red Alert, because they don't work. But Remastered Collection does work on the Codeweavers crossover, and not just with newer M1 Apple Silicon M1 M3 Macs, but it works with Intel-based Macs too. I've actually tested it, and I've wondered, wow, so older Macs from 2020 and earlier can also play Remastered Collection, so long as you have the hardware and software. You need to have a certain amount of hard drive space, but 20 gigabytes for the Remastered Collection is nothing, okay? It's nothing compared to a lot of other more recent games. So, I have a video on the Command Conquer Remastered Collection, and I will have a link in the description for it and in the cards. You can take a look at it. I was happy, back earlier last year, near the end of 2023, when it's like, wow, Command Conquer Remastered actually does work on Codeweavers crossover now. I was happy, and I have a whole guide for it. There's another episode in the description with chapters, so you don't have to watch through all the gameplay. But yeah, that's another good piece of news. Either way, we're going to be going to the other game that works on Steam with the EA Play service, and that is going to be the expansion set to Command & Conquer Generals known as 0 Hour, which I enjoy so much more for the graphical interface, and which just shows your super weapons and abilities on the screen. It's great. Anyway, we're going to be going on to 0 Hour next. Alright, so now we are getting started with 0 Hour, the expansion for Command & Conquer Generals. Like I said before, I enjoy the interface quite a bit more with 0 Hour than with the base game. It's a real improvement. I mean, I like having special abilities or super weapons shown up on your screen as a type of heading, which later shows up in the third Command & Conquer Tiberium Wars and in Red Alert 3 and the expansion Uprising. It's a great, convenient way to show your abilities on the screen rather than having to go back to your command center. I mean, you could hotkey, but it's even easier. Who's going to complain about even easier? So, as we go through this epic intro, the thing I really enjoy about it, which I'm going to demonstrate a little bit by playing in it, is the challenge, which is where you can pick very specialist types of generals in the Global Liberation Army, and you can play through a campaign with against the other generals from China, USA, and Chile. once again, there's this issue of not having the fonts. I'm going to try and figure out what fonts 0 Hour and Generals need. Apparently the fonts that I had on the Steam installation aren't enough, so it's probably some kind of fonts that aren't preset for Steam, but I may find out in a future episode how to install the fonts. And otherwise, it shows up fine, but this is the beginning of the challenge. Playing as General Fei is based on infantry against General Granger. Now, some generals do not show up as opponents, like General Fei doesn't, which is kind of sad. I'm pretty sure there's a modded version of General 0 Hour that lets you play against these other generals. But this is how the challenge round starts. That other general talks smack to you and shows you his base, and then you begin. So, beginning with the Air Force general, he attacks you with the air, with the Raptors and helicopters, and it gets more difficult and more diverse in his attack methods because his AI gets enhanced depending on the difficulty. So I'm just going to start out with minigunners. Those are nice units. They basically have miniguns or chain guns, and they can shoot at air and ground as basic infantry, but they're more expensive than normal Red Guard, and they only come out of barracks as one trained for the price of one. So there's trade-offs. The infantry general does not have the Overlord tank at all. He has the regular troop crawler. It's an upgraded version of the troop crawler with more infantry on board. But otherwise, at the end, you have some other games I haven't mentioned quite yet. You can play Red Alert 2 and Yuri's Revenge, but there's a lot of lag. So they do work, but play at your own risk is what I have to say for them. If you don't mind games being slow and laggy, then fine, but they are playable, but they don't perform as well as the other games like Generals or Renegade do. In the meantime, I'm going to be going to my conclusion and a preview of future episodes that will be coming up.
And so now we conclude this with a little bit of fun in the multiplayer practice of Command Conquer Renegade. I have 2 episodes I plan on having coming up for Kaostutorials, showing the advanced settings on crossover. And before that, there's going to be Halo, the Master Chief Collection. I figured out a great way to get it working with the settings engaged on Steam through Codeweavers crossover. So it should be pretty fun. I'm also going to be coming up with a fan film for Battle Angel, Alita, or Gunham, which should be pretty fun to listen to and watch to an extent. It will be from Last Order, so for those who haven't read very far in the manga, I'm warning you it'll have spoilers. But I promise it will be fun to watch. But in the meantime, it's been a great using advanced settings to get these games working. I already have previous. You can follow my playlist, Kaostutorials, which I have a link to in the cards and the description. Also, in the meantime, I look forward to seeing more and enjoying more with you as my audience, and I thank you for your input. I'm going to be playing live streams, so follow my channel and keep in touch with some fun game live streams, retro games. This will include Gundam Martian Memory for PS1. The game was only in Japanese for a while, but now there's an English fan translation that I can play, and my audience who isn't Japanese or who isn't familiar with the Japanese language can understand it quite well. And other than that, I will go over to my last words of thanks and credits, and we shall have another day, another time, and another place to enjoy more content from my channel here at Kaos Nova. You can also check out my blog at Radio Chaos, which I mentioned earlier in the video. It's a fun place. You can see plenty of things that I take time to write down and record. But in the meantime, here are my final concluding statements. Hi everyone, Kaos Nova here, and this is the ending of the video presentation on kaostutorials. And here's the deal: if you want to see more of my tutorials on getting your old games to work on Mac, and you want to see more tutorials on how to do various other tasks, such as very cheap ways to make YouTube videos that still look decent, and much more, feel free to subscribe. And if you want to be among the first to get each video, hit the notifications. And please, if you enjoy liking this, your vote still counts, so please click the like with a big thumbs up. All right, you have a wonderful day, and I'll be signing off.